All right, folks, next stop on our appendicular skeleton tour is the lower limbs. So that means we have to start talking about the pelvic girdle. Now, the pelvic girdle is made of right and left hip bones or coxal bones. And the pelvis is going to be those hip bones plus your sacrum. Talked about the sacrum when we spoke about the spine and the axial skeleton. So now we're going to focus on the coxal bones. You can also call them os coxae, os coxae. And these are going to be the coxal bones, or the hip bone is formed from three fused bones. And so here's an overall view of what the pelvis looks like. As you can see, put this down the middle and you'll have a left side, or my left, and a right side, or my right. And of course, we focus on just one side at a time because, again, the right is going to look like the left. Now, the three fused bones are going to be the ilium, the ischium, and also the pubis. And they come together to form the coxal bone. And there's also a joint, really is going to be another depression that creates a joint with the femur, the largest bone and the strongest bone in the body. And we'll talk about that joint as well, which is the acetabellum. First, you want to ask, what is the pelvis itself? Okay, pelvis is basically a ring of these bones that surround the pelvic cavity. So you'll see we have this cavity that looks like a little heart shape. We try our best to just try to come up with like the best shapes for it, but you can see it kind of looks like a little heart shape. Okay, this looks more like a male pelvis because that heart shape is a little bit more narrow versus it being wider for females. We'll talk about the differences between male and female pelvises as we go along. But first, let's talk about the first bone, which is going to be the ilium. Now, the ilium is going to be superior, a superior flat region. So here you'll see the ilium here in purple. It is flat, but it does have an iliac crest. So remember, one of those bone markings we talked about were a crest. And that's where your hip bones are, your hips are. So here's where that crest looks like. I'll show you a better image as we go along. And that's where that iliac crest is. Now, I like your iliac crest. It's nice. It's basically saying, I like your hips. They're nice. That's what people come up with. Of course, I'm not saying that to nobody. not at all. But you could do your own thing. One thing I always remember is that song, I put my hands up on my hip. When you dip, we dip, you dip. That's what's in my head. So when you put your hands on your hip, you're putting your hands on your iliac crest. Okay? The next bone is going to be the ischium, and this is going to be your butt bones. Just keep that in mind. So it's going to be the posterior region, okay? And it's really going to be the back of your pelvis. And so you can see the ischium here is going to be in pink. And here's a side view of the ischium. So it's in the back of that pelvis. And that is going to, again, be your butt bones. Okay, some people also say sit bones. And so if you want to kind of remind yourself what the ischium is, you say the roundish ischium is in your rear. So yes, that's your butt bones. Some folks have smaller muscle there. Of course, it feels like you're just sitting on bones. If you don't have a behind that's a little bit larger, or your gluteus maximus is not as pronounced, then yes, you can feel like you're just sitting on bones. Okay. Another thing we notice about the ischium is going to be that there is a large hole here. So if it's a hole, we know it's a foramen, and that's going to be the obturator foramen, okay? And that large hole is going to be the connection between your ischium and your pubis bone, okay? When those two bones come together, they form that large foramen or the large hole, okay? Another thing that we'll notice here is the blue portion, which again is going to be another bone, which is the pubis bone. Okay, you can see it here on the side view as well. That's the pubis bone. And that's going to be the lower front region or anterior region. Say front. So our ischium is in the back and our pubis is in the front. Now, when you have both of your coxal bones come together, so the right and the left side come together, they form the pubic symphysis. And as we know, that's going to be the joint between the right and left pelvis, and it is pointy. So you can say the pubis is pointy because it's almost like it's pointing up. You can definitely feel the pubic bone and also the pubic symphysis right above your genitals. Okay, folks, so that's one thing you can look at as well. And the beauty of it is that it does have a joint between the right and left, and it does have some flex to it. Okay, it does have some flex. And all three of these bones, the ilium, the ischium, and the pubis, come together to form the right and left side of the coxal bone. Okay, so you have a right coxal, and then you also have a left coxal. And if we want to join those together, we have the pubic symphysis that's going to help us join them together, but also these articulate with the sacrum. Okay? Now, the next thing is we're talking about a girdle. So how does it connect the lower limbs? Well, the first place it's going to connect the lower limbs is going to be the acetabellum. This is going to be your hip socket. And it's formed by all three of those bones fusing together. Not fusing together. What am I talking? So let's go ahead and look at this. We have some joints in between here. Boom, boom, boom. All these joints come together between the pubic, the ischium, and the ilium. And they come together to form this deeper depression. So remember when we had the shoulder girdle and we had that glenoid cavity? That was more of a shallow depression so the humerus can fit in there, allowing the humerus to move a lot. Or with the acetabellum, we are forming a deeper depression here, okay? So this is going to be a deeper depression. Let me write that down. And if there is a deeper depression, yes, you have some movement, but your movement is going to be limited. And think about it. If you're going ahead and you're moving your arm, you can go frontwards, backwards, to the sides, everything. But if you're thinking of your leg, you only can go so far when you're trying to go out laterally, or you only can go so far, right? And yes, some people are very flexible, and that's great, but at the same time, you still are only going to go so far versus the arms, which has the ability to have way more movement because that depression in the glenoid cavity is a little bit more shallow than the acetabellum. Okay? So when you're looking at this, just think of this as a round socket that fits the head of the femur. So if you have the pubis, which is going to be pointing front, and then the acetabellum is going to be to the side of that. So we'll see that example here, and of course I'll show you other images as well. We're going to have our pubis pointing forward, and as you can see, our acetabellum is going to be on the side of that. Okay? Of course, some might be asking, why can't we have as much movement as we have with the other cavities? Of course, it has to do with the cavity itself, right? In a deep depression, or is it going to be a shallow depression? But we also have to think of what's the purpose of those lower limbs and, of course, the pelvis itself. The sacrum is going to be connecting to the pelvic bones of the ilium, and that needs to be a strong connection, strong joint connection there. Because remember, you're taking the weight of your body, going to be carried by the spine, and that weight's going to get transferred to your coxal bone. So the sacrum and coxal bones need to be connected really well. And then, of course, that weight can also be distributed to your legs. So we got to keep all that in mind of why the pelvic girdle is, yes, it has some flexibility, especially with females who have more flexibility because of birthing. But we definitely needed to also be able to uphold and be able to distribute weight. All right, folks, let's go ahead and get some better images of this. Again, we have our sacrum here, and of course the coccyx. Can't forget about that. And then we have our articulation of the ilium and the sacrum on either side. You can just focus on the right or left. We also have our ischium, our pubis, and of course we're going to have our acetabellum. Okay? Now here's a better view of the acetabellum, where all of our coxal bones connect to form that deeper depression, which again is going to allow us to have that hip socket and the femur's head to be formed there so that we can attach our lower limbs. Okay? We still have our pubic arch. A pubic arch is basically when both the right and left coxal bones come together. You kind of draw a little line under there to see how large or how small that pubic arch is. And then we do have the pubic symphysis, which is going to be the joint connecting both the right and left of the hip bones themselves. Okay? Now, when it comes to actually being able to touch this and feel this, remember, these are fused bones, so you'll have one whole piece of it, just like you have one whole piece of the sacrum and the coccyx. And, well, one whole piece of the sacrum and one whole piece of the coccyx, and of course they fuse together as well. But you can actually feel that iliac crest here. You feel those hip bones at the top, that iliac crest. If you actually, of course, you've already probably been in lab with that, and you can be able to feel that too. All right, folks? Now, again, what is the main function? To be able to bear the weight of the body. And of course, for females to be able to bear children. Now, going and talking about the pelvic girdle and therefore the pelvis, which again is going to be the hip bones and the sacrum, we do need to focus on distinguishing between the male and female pelvis. Look at general appearances. And when you're talking about males and female pelvis, the main thing is going to be the shape. The shape of the pelvis differs between males and females, and this allows us to have a high amount of identification. So if you were given bones and you had to figure out if this is a male or female, you can actually get a high amount, even upwards of 97% of identification of the sex that belongs to those bones just by looking at the pelvis itself. Okay? So let's go ahead and look at general appearance. As you can see, what looks different? We have the same coxal bones here, but it looks like our sacrum is kind of a little bit coming towards us more than the sacrum being kind of pointed downward here or towards the back. Okay, this one looks kind of curved under. Also, we notice that the pelvic cavity is a little bit more narrow here than it's a little bit open here for the females. Okay. Another thing, that pubic arch is a little bit more narrow here, a little bit more obtuse there with the females. So let's go ahead and get into those details. So for males, it's going to be more narrow and heavy. Okay, so it's going to be basically heavy because the bones here are going to be thicker, whereas females are going to be wider. It's one thing we notice. This one's kind of narrow, and this one's kind of wider. Okay, and I always like to draw little lines around it just to make distinguishing pieces. Wider, and they're going to be lighter because the bones are thinner here. Now, you might be asking, why are the bones thinner? Remember, the goal is to have, we don't know who baby this is. The goal is to have the baby go through that actual pelvic cavity to be able to go through the birthing canal at that time, right? So we definitely need our bones to have a little bit, tiny bit more flexibility as we're going around here. And also with females, when you're getting pregnant, there's a lot of hormones that are going to contribute to your actual pelvis widening for childbirth. Okay. Next, the angle of the pubic arch. We can see we have our angle here. You find the pubic symphysis, and then you draw an angle. And then we also have our angle here, up here. And we definitely notice differences. So the angle arch here is going to be sharper. Sometimes you'll see that be acute. I'm going to spell it. Acute. And then for the females, it's going to be wider. Also be called obtuse. Now, what is the pelvic inlet? Okay, what's the pelvic inlet? Again, the pelvic inlet is going to be the pelvic cavity portion. You can see here that the pelvic inlet definitely has some form of a heart shape, right? So definitely going to be like a heart shape, especially for males. And it's closer together. It's very smaller, not as large. Whereas the females, you see this is going to be, yes, it has a heart shape, but a lot of times you'll see it be described as oval, and it is further apart. So that pelvic inlet is going to be a little bit wider for those females as well. And remember, what's the whole purpose of this? The female pelvis is adapted for birth or birthing. Okay? Now, again, one little detail I want to add on here as well before we get into more pictures, it's going to be that sacrum. As you can see here, the sacrum in the coccyx is kind of curved under, whereas the sacrum in the coccyx here is going to be pointing downwards, allowing more space inside that pelvic inlet. All right, folks, let's go ahead and get into some more visual of this. So we have the female here and we have the male here. We have the different left lateral sides of a coxal bone, and then we have them come together. Now, you can definitely see that this is more of a heart shaped, and this you can actually see the more oval piece of that pelvic inlet as well. Okay? So wider and it's oval. Those are just some differences you can see even in your text. Let's go ahead and move on to our lower limbs. Okay? And specifically beyond the girdle. Now we're talking about the bones of the lower limbs. So we're definitely going to have our bones of our thighs and legs. You can say that. And this is going to be our anterior or frontal view. So first is going to be the strongest and largest bone in our body, which is going to be our femur. And the femur here is going to have that large head as well. It's going to fit into the acetabellum and a ball and socket joint. And it's going to allow us to, again, that girdle is going to allow the thigh and leg bones to attach to the axial skeleton in some way. Okay? Next, we see that that round head is kind of like a round ball. So the head would be our description of a bone marking when it comes to the femur, but also it's like a round ball, okay? And again, it fits into that acetabellum. Now, one cool thing about the femur is it's going to create articulations. And what it's going to articulate with? It's going to form joints with two different bones. And that's going to be our tibia and our patella, kneecap, okay? The patella, let's start with that one. We remember that that is a sesamoid bone. So it's a version of a short bone, but again, it does only form in or develop in the patellar tendon. And it looks like a flat round saucer, okay? And we also call this our kneecap. And you can see that here. Now, that femur is going to also articulate with the tibia, and that's going to be a larger medial bone. So that's going to be towards the inside or closer to the medial aspects of the body itself. And this is going to contribute to the knee joint as well. Now let's talk about that. So when it comes to the femur, that's how we're able to get our attachment to the axial skeleton through our pelvic girdle. But this femur is only going to attach to our patella and our tibia. It's not going to attach to our fibula. The fibula is going to be a smaller, okay, more lateral bone. It's very narrow. And its attachment is going to be based on the actual tibia, okay? Let's go ahead and get some views of this first. Sort of zoom in on our femur, our patella, our tibia, and then we also have our fibula, okay? So as you can see, the femur is going to articulate with that patella and also with the tibia, but the fibula only articulates with the tibia, okay? See that here. And it articulates in multiple areas, like here and here and here as well, like here and here, okay? And that's how we will see that. Now let's go ahead and look at what the tibia and fibula look like on their own, and also the femur and patella. We did see that we were bending at our knee, but here is someone that's standing straight up and down. As you can see, we have articulations with the femur and blue here, and the tibia, and then the patella. And we also have the fibula attaching to the tibia on this side as well. Okay. Now, one thing you should know is, again, the patella is only going to show up on a anterior aspects. When you go from the back, the patella does not show up posterior, because again, it's made from patellar tendon. I'm going to add some more details to our tibia and our fibula. Okay. Now, the tibia again is going to be a medial bone, and it's very large, as you can see here. And the easiest way to remember the tibia is that it's going to form that shin. So when you hit your shin, which is very painful on something, then that is you hitting your tibia. Okay? And also we have a longer end here. Let's see if I can move this down. So as you can see, the tibia here is longer on one side. And that is actually going to help with the inside of the ankle bone. That's where the articulation to the ankle bone is going to be. Okay? And that's going to be called the medial, because we're talking about tibia, and it's the medial bone. And that's going to be the medial malleolus. Now, when you look at the fibula, you also see that it has kind of this outer pointy end at the bottom, and that's going to be the part that articulates with our ankle as well. That's going to be the lateral malleolus. It's a little detailed. You can see it's very narrow as well. You see the narrowness on the posterior side too. Very narrow, whereas the tibia is going to be thicker here, and it does have those sharp points like the front of it, feeling your shin and feeling that tibia there. But I always like to talk about the ankle attachments because we will be going into the foot next. Again, we have that kind of pointier end to the tibia, and that's going to be the medial malleolus. It's going to help us connect to the inside of the ankle bone. And then we also have the outer ankle bone, from the fibula, and more of that pointing into the fibula. You can see that here with the foot and the bone. We'll talk about it as well. That's going to be the lateral malleolus. Into our last piece of the puzzle when it comes to the appendicular skeleton, and that's going to be the foot. So the foot and the ankle are made of three sections of bones, just like we saw with the hand. Okay? And those 3 bones are going to be our tarsals. So carpals, we had 8 short bones for our hands. Okay, when it came to our carpals. And that's going to be our wrist bones. But for the tarsals, there's going to be 7 short bones of the ankle. Okay? Phalanges, there's still 14 tiny long bones, just like in the hand. Metatarsals, there's still going to be 5 of the metatarsals as well. Okay? There's going to be 5 here. There's going to be 14 here, but now there's only 7 here. All right, folks, let's go ahead and get into the details. The large one that you see here is kind of on top is going to be our talus. Now it's going to be the bone on top of the ankle. So the talus is the top of the tarsus. It's a lot of alliteration, right? But again, another bone you'll really see that's very large is going to be our heel bone, which we see here. And that's the calcaneus bone, or you can also say the heel bone. And this is going to be our biggest tarsal. Those are the other 2. Of course, the other ones are just other short bones that you won't really have to know the names of. You might not even know have to know the names of talus and heel or calcaneus, but of course, those are ones that you normally see overall. Now let's get into our metatarsals. Again, they're the long bones that are going to create the arch of the foot. And you can actually touch your metatarsals, just like you can touch your talus as well. And you should be able to see that each of those metatarsals are going straight to your actual toes, okay? And they're still going to be numbered 1 through 5. So it's still going to be numbered 1 for the big toe all the way to 5 for the pinky toe, okay? That's going to be medial, close to the mid portion of the body, and then, of course, lateral all the way to the side of the body with the pinky toe. Now, the phalanges, again, are going to be 14 tiny, long bones. Singular, they're going to be phalanx. Again, that means battle formation. And each toe has 3 bones. So we know the proximal, middle, and distal, just like we saw in the hand. And of course, the big toe only has 2, which is the proximal and distal. So even though it's very, very tiny, yes, you will have that distal on your pinky toe as well. So it does still have those amounts. Now again, big toe, there's only going to be 2. So just keep that in mind. All right, folks. That is going to be it for our appendicular skeleton, and I hope this video helped you.